Trevor Smith, and he's going to talk about climate change gardening. As we know, climate change is actually real, and the effects that have been long predicted are now coming to pass. However, it's not all bleak. There are things we can do. Our plant choices can actually make a huge difference in our local ecology. And Trevor is going to tell us about how we can do that. Trevor is an award-winning regenerative landscape designer and the founder of ReEarth Solutions. He is passionate about the natural world, which inspires his commitment to sustainable landscaping practices in the era of climate change and the implementation of ecological design principles. Trevor is also passionate about sharing his knowledge and experience and is the host of the podcast, Peace, Love, and Pollinators, the live online Ask the Expert event, Tuesdays with Trevor, and the Hive Mind for Business Owners, a program of the Ecological Landscape Alliance. I'm so happy that he's here to speak to us tonight. Thank you, Trevor.
All right, can everybody hear me? Beautiful. So I will just be signaling to have the slides changed tonight, but I am very happy to be here. I am very excited for such a turnout. I was saying before coming up here that driving here, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know if there'd be 4 to 6 people in July. You know, of course, this is actually a destination for some people, but you all mostly live here, so you know, I'm glad you all showed up and you weren't all on vacation. Although if there were only 4 people, I'd try to dazzle you as well. So, yes, my name is Trevor Smith, and I am very excited to give this presentation. I will say now, and probably a few other times, that this is not a depressing presentation. You may get a little scared and think I'm lying in the beginning, but I need to set the stage. But it is not a depressing presentation at all. So, I was just in a meeting with people who are evacuated from wildfire and people who are evacuated from flood. Let that sink in. That first happened to me in 2001. It's happened 4 other times since then. Not a depressing presentation, just setting the stage. But this was a huge moment for me in my career, because it was the moment that I realized that climate refugees aren't over there. That climate refugees are actually right here. We always think about climate refugees, we think arid countries. We think, you know, the continent of Africa or the like, where soil is drying up and people can't live there anymore. But no, climate refugees are here, and that made a huge, huge impression on me. Climate change, it is real, despite what anybody tells you. I can pretty much tell by looking at everybody in this room that the weather now is probably not what you remember as a child. For instance, April flowers no longer bring May flowers. May was just like, I'm going to have to bring my own flowers because April is usually pretty dry right now. So things are definitely changing. I was very happy to see snow. I didn't really like the snow as much as I liked it as a child, but very happy to have that snow cover and have a typical kind of New England winter. So, we own the lovely designation of warming faster. New England is warming faster than the rest of the planet. You probably wouldn't figure that. But we have actually warmed 3.29 degrees in the past 100 years, and the rest of the world has only warmed 2. This is mostly due to Greenland melting and changing the tides, changing the water, and warming up our environment. The sad piece, not depressing, but the sad piece is we can never go back to the way it was. So all we can do is do better and think differently. So stop, we're never going to have our childhood winters and summers and everything back. Just like we will never have our childhood looks back. So just accept what we have and let's do really well with what we have. So what do we do now? We need to please stop thinking of images like this. Images like this, while very real, make climate change feel bigger than us. They make climate change make us feel helpless, like we need to be saved. And images like this, and if you want to do something about this, yes, there are organizations that you can donate to, but this makes us feel small and helpless. I would like for you to focus more on this, because this is something you can do right now this summer. We have native bees, native plants, functioning gardens. That is something that we have power over. So let's focus on what we can change and what we can control. This right here is the green sweat bee, for those of you who don't know. I teach pollinators to elementary school kids, and when I talk about the green sweat bee, I say she is my favorite because she looks absolutely stunning on every flower she lands on. If you were a second grade class, one of you would say, well, if you love her so much, why don't you marry her? And then I would respond, if I could get her to stay still long enough, I would. So the days of landscaping for beauty alone are over. We've blown it. We were trusted with nice things. Now we can't be trusted with nice things. And we need to move on. Because our current approach to land care is akin to sending plastic, rubber, and steel to a factory without knowing who works there, what they need, and expecting a car to come out the other side. This is what the fertilizer industry has done to us. This is what's even more grievous, and I fault nobody here, but is that the landscape industry subscribes to this. Every spring they come by and they put a bunch of stuff on your lawn. Do you know that your lawn needs that? I have a company, which I'll tell you about later. I've done over 50 soil tests in this spring. The majority of gardens, way too high in phosphorus. That's why their plants are struggling. But every spring we just start gunning because the bag says it's going to be awesome. And so we just keep saying, all right, and we keep throwing stuff. And the landscape industry does as well, without actually knowing what our garden, what our land needs, what the earth needs, what the soil wants. Sustainability. We love to say sustainability. Companies really love to say it. My view, or my feeling of sustainability, is this. We know what it means, and we know what it's supposed to be. But in practice, our practice of sustainability is how much can I take or how close can I go without breaking it? Which is very much like 8-year-old me with my sister. I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. How close can I get before she decks me? That is pretty much how we are practicing sustainability, and that is not sustainable at all. So in the introduction, we talked about me being a regenerative land care professional. Let me explain what that means, because a lot of people can say it's eco-landscaping. It's a little different. If you look at our current climate, being our climate, and the way we treat our land, like having the flu, you don't want to start practicing sustainability when you have the flu. You don't want to sustain feeling like crap forever. You want to get healthy. You want to regenerate, and then sustain from there. That is what regenerative land care is about. It is about getting Mother Nature's systems back online, restoring soil health, hydrology, plant communities, and then getting out of the way. That's when we start practicing sustainability. Once we have a healthy ecosystem, then we move on from there. So, which one of these is actually providing an ecosystem service? This is my other favorite, the great black digger wasp. Again, she is just gorgeous in that iridescent blue. Not quite as much as the green sweat bee, but she's great. She's wonderful looking. She doesn't sting. Neither one of them will sting. She's big, she's scary, and she's beautiful, but they don't sting. So if you plant mountain mint, I guarantee that you are going to see one of these wasps, and you can just go right up and marvel at her beauty and not have to fear a thing. Ecosystem services. These include provisioning services, such as food and water, regulatory services, such as flood and disease control, cultural services, such as spiritual, recreational, and cultural beliefs, and supporting services, such as nutrient cycling and maintaining conditions for life on Earth. I guarantee you that the person with the backpack blower on wasn't doing any of these things. Ruining the recreation, because you can't have fun with that humming in the background all the time. So certainly wasn't doing any of that at all. So tonight I will be talking about essentially the three pillars of climate control, climate control and landscaping. We have soil, we have water, and we have plants. All of those together can actually help offset climate change on a local scale, which can then be on a global scale. Your backyard or your little piece of the planet can actually function as a carbon sink, actually function for habitat, for stormwater control, and you can actually reverse climate change with your little piece of the planet. So we will start with soil. Right. So the answer really is beneath our feet. Soil is sand, silt, and clay. That is the mineral makeup. This is very basic. I'm going to tell you right now, everything you need to know about fighting climate change you learned in 5th grade. I said that at a BU climate conference. Told everybody that they really did not need to be at BU and studying all that. That didn't go over really well. It sounded better in my head. But really, you already know it. It's intuitive. So soil is air, water, sand, silt, and clay, and organic matter. One of the biggest unrecognized contributors to the climate crisis is compaction. This is something that we do not think about at all. However, compaction and the loss of pore space within the soil actually does massive amounts of damage. A bobcat or a piece of machinery moving over your soil can compact your soil to 3 feet. So that is something that you can't fix with a core aerator, just aerating your soil. You got to go back. You're moving too fast, Rob. There you go. So compacted soil affects hydrology, which creates erosion, which creates stormwater runoff. We only have, it's estimated at this rate that we only have 80 years of topsoil left. What does that mean? That means we have 80 crops, 80 years of crop growing, 80 seasons of crop growing left before our soil is totally depleted. So we kind of need to do something about that. Carbon sequestration. We cannot sequester carbon when our soil is compacted because nothing's living in it. Then we just have dirt, and there is no room or area to sequester carbon. And then the biodiversity and biology. Nothing can really live in compacted soil, above ground or below ground. And actually we'll get into how nature tells you a little bit about that. Now, go ahead. I've never seen a nitrogen deficient plant in a natural ecosystem. There's obviously something we're doing in agriculture and landscaping that is interfering with the biological fixation of nitrogen. Think about it. We throw nitrogen on our landscapes constantly. But in nature, nobody's fertilizing. Plants don't really need us. We've just made it so plants need us. Christina Jones was a friend of mine. She was a professor at Wellesley College. And she was the one that actually said that. And I wrote that down on a napkin right when she said it. So what we need to do is focus on the soil carbon sponge. We need to focus on really healthy soil. The difference between conventional and regenerative landscaping is whether or not you are treating the soil as a living organism that constantly needs to be fed inputs via living roots. And we are going to get into that. This big exchange. I stood in a room of architects and asked them, landscape architects, and asked them, do you know what carbon sequestration is? It's another term like sustainability. We know carbon sequestration, like we get it. But I was like, do you really know how it works and how it happens? So, go ahead. What happens is, through photosynthesis, the plant makes sugar. It takes sunlight, it takes water, and it makes sugar. Sugar is carbon. It then takes up to 80% of that sugar and pushes it out through its roots into the soil, feeding the soil life, the fungi and all the microbes in the soil. They are also carbon. And all those fungi and everything in the soil are digesting that organic matter, carbon, to the point where it can't be digested anymore, and that's when we call it humates. That's sequestered carbon. All of those microbes in the soil, which I said were carbon, are now, there's a whole ecosystem there. They're all eating somebody who's eating each other, and they're living and dying in the soil, sequestered carbon. So it's not pumping gas into the ground. It's actually sugars created, and it is the life in the ground that is pulling all of that carbon from the atmosphere down. 1 gram of carbon in the soil holds 8 grams of water. All of this is extremely simple. Very minute changes can have a huge difference. Go ahead. One of my business partners and mentors, Dan Kittredge, you can just hit it again, said, plants do not have the ability to digest soil. This was another thing that I knew but never really thought of. And most people think that just because a root is touching the soil, that it is able to take up all the nutrients it wants. That's not how that works. It is all the microbes and everything within the soil that take that sand, silt, and clay and dissolve that into water-soluble nutrients that the roots then take up. The fungi in the soil dissolve the minerals and everything else. Everybody eating everybody else in there. When they die or when they poop, you know what? They poop out the perfect form of nitrogen for plants. Go figure. It was all figured out. These guys right here, we have nematodes, they're like the little worms. We have protozoa. We have fungi, which are the strings at the top, and we have bacteria. All of these guys in the soil are exactly what are making all the vitamins and minerals for the plant to then take up. We usurped that system and started adding fertilizers with water-soluble, nutrients in them for our plant. So we basically, and this is, I don't mean to be dark, but we basically kind of got into an abusive relationship with our gardens and said, you don't need any friends, you need me, and I'll give you what you need. But then if we go away, or one of the reasons, like if you're trying to take your lawn and go to an organic lawn, any lawn care professional is going to say, you do that, it's just going to die, you're just going to have weeds, you can't go full organic on your lawn, it's going to go wrong. That's because your lawn's been trained not to have friends. Plants need communities just like we need communities. With plants, with a tree says, I need more copper. It pushes out some sugar right to the exact fungi that actually is mining copper in the soil. Trees between each other, if you've read Susan Simard's book, will actually share nutrients. And they'll be like, hey, can I borrow a cup of sugar? And they're like, yeah. And then later on, the other plant's like, hey, can I borrow a cup of sugar? Remember? And they're like, yeah, sure, absolutely. And that's how it all works. It's not competition. It's community. Healthy soil is full of life. In fact, it is the most biodiverse place on Earth. You've probably heard that there's more biology in a teaspoon of soil than there are people on the planet, in a handful of soil than there are stars in the Milky Way. When the soil food web is activated, diverse plants and animals will return above ground to above ground habitats, and it can be restored. So all is not lost. I told you, this isn't depressing. All is not lost. We just have to tweak the system a little bit, and it's going to get great. For every 1% of soil organic matter, the soil will hold 20 to 25,000 gallons of water per acre. So if you went ahead and got your soil test, and it came back at 3% organic matter, and you left the leaves, or you added some compost, and then you got your soil tested again, and now you're up to 4 or 5, your property is holding a lot more water. This is good when it rains, because when it rains, your property acts like a sponge and holds that water there. This is excellent during drought, because during drought, there is sufficient water in the soil. If you get above 5%, if you start to creep up on like 6 and 7% organic matter, and you have all that life in your soil, your plants can go 90 days between rainstorms. They're not going to look amazing, but they're not going to die. So when you have healthy soil, your grass roots can actually go 1.5 feet, 2 feet down into the soil if you stop fertilizing them all the time and bring life back to the ecosystem. Your grass roots, we all think of grass roots as being like 4 to 6 inches down. They can go 1.5 feet down. Guess whose lawn's not going to burn up when there's a water ban? With 1.5 foot turf roots. So now we will get on to the water portion. That's just kind of the brief on soil. I have talks that go way deep into all of these, but we're just going to keep it brief. This right here is part of my bucket list. This is a 700-year-old bubble locked up inside of a glacier. I'm a total water nerd, so this was just awesome to me. I really only have 2 things on my bucket list. One was to see the glaciers before they melt away. The other was to see the monarchs in Mexico and just see the limbs bowing underneath the weight of butterflies. I have yet to go to Mexico. I'm really hoping that we have enough monarchs that the limbs will bow under the weight of them. I don't know what happens when you complete your bucket list. It's only 2. So I don't know what happens after that, but that's not scaring me from going to Mexico. I figure if I can see those 2 things, it's a life well lived, and I'm good to go. But I'm not really sure what happens after that. Go ahead. So, since 1980, the number of extreme meteorological events has doubled. We ask ourselves, so what is the problem? Well, that is the problem. Last week kind of showed us a little bit of it. I mean, I was talking to my aunt last week. She's 84. She's like, I don't ever remember it reaching 100 degrees when I was a kid. She's like, we get up in the 90s during a heat wave, but I don't remember it ever being over 100. So, as I said, just like 5th grade, this is all you need to know in part about fixing climate change, the natural water cycle. I want you to just pay attention to a few things here. Upper left corner, surface runoff, if you can see that with the light. Less than 1%. Interflow, 20 to 30%. Evapotranspiration, that's the moisture that the trees give off, 40 to 50%. This right here is the watershed. This is Mount Katahdin. When it rains here, it takes weeks, if not longer, for that rain to make its way down to this lake. The rain is intercepted by all of those trees, gently set down to the ground, where it infiltrates, and gravity pulls it down to the lowest point. It takes weeks to get down there. Here, we have our urban water cycle. Now let's look at this. Surface runoff, 20 to 30%, up from less than 1%. Interflow, 0 to 30%, from 20 to 30%. Evapotranspiration, 20 to 30, down from 40 to 50%. So this is what is happening here with us now. What is, our problem currently? Okay. This is how we treat stormwater runoff. What is happening when it rains? Water is making its way to our waterways in a matter of seconds, not days and weeks. It's a matter of seconds. It all goes right down the drain. When it goes right down the drain, where does that go? It goes away, right?
The ocean.
Show me a way. We're a blue marble floating in space. There is no way. We just move that problem elsewhere. So what we're actually doing is what I did when I was a teenager. My mom said, clean my room. And I pushed everything in the closet, closed the door, and I said, look, spick and span. No, we've just moved our problems elsewhere. What we need to do, and what we are very, very good at as a people, is addressing the symptom. So when we have all this rain, and the streets are all flooded, we're like, oh, we have a flooding problem. No, we have an infiltration problem. When you want to solve a flooding problem, you move the water as quickly as possible from one place to the next. if we said, oh, we have an infiltration problem, then we would try to figure out how can we get the water back into the ground. You know, when we do it for everything. You know, when we have heartburn, instead of stop eating what is giving us the heartburn, we're like, oh, I'm just going to treat the symptom, take this, and keep doing what I'm doing. It's exactly what we do. We have a propensity for doing this. We're always treating the symptom and never actually addressing the problem. The solution that I see is the marrying of the built environment and the natural world. We've been kind of designing rogue long enough, and we're not going to move out of our houses, and this building's gorgeous. So I'm not saying the built environment needs to go anywhere, but we need to, moving forward, we need to design better. And we need to find a way to bring the natural world into the built environment. One of the ways to do that is through nature-based solutions, otherwise known as green infrastructure. Some examples of green infrastructure are bioretention, which are rain gardens and bioswales, permeable pavements and porous asphalt, and then green roofs. All of these solve the infiltration problem. We're taking that water and bioretention and letting it soak into the ground. Through porous asphalt and permeable pavements, that water is landing on what would be an impervious surface, making its way into the ground. Through green roofs, we're mimicking the watershed, and all the water is landing on the green roof and then slowly coming down, running off. If at all, it might just stay on that roof and then evaporate. This right here is one of the reasons I absolutely love my job. So this was a late August, early September morning where it was the chill was just starting to work in, but the days were still warm. I showed up at a client's house at about 7 o'clock, and I saw this little lady right here sitting warming herself on this black-eyed Susan. Why do I love my job? There's 9 billion people on this planet, and I'm the only one that had that experience. And this is what I absolutely love about landscaping and gardening in general, because we, if we're aware, are blessed to have experiences that nobody else has. If you are in the fall driving down the street all by yourself and you see one leaf just kind of twisting its way to the ground, leaves like snowflakes are all individuals. No two have ever been alike. If you see that leaf twisting to the ground, then you saw a one-of-a-kind leaf making its last journey to the earth before it becomes soil again. You are, out of 9 billion people, you are the only person to have that experience. That, to me, is awesome. So, plant the change that you wish to see in the world is what I ask you all to do. Like this lady right here. Now, if this was, again, back to the second grade class, I would ask you all, does anybody know a messy eater at home? And somebody would be like, my brother, he's gross. Yeah, but this is exactly what I want to see. This happy lady right here performing more of a service. She thinks she's just gathering food. She's performing more of a service than she even knows. So yes, that brings us to native plants. So why natives? Well, greater climate resistance. This is the edge that natives have that ornamentals and exotics don't have. Native plants are able to evolve with the seasons. So let's just say you had butterfly weed growing in your garden. So that butterfly weed from 2025 set its seeds. Those seeds have imprinted on them exactly what 2025 was like. So they know that it was really wet and then super duper dry with some downpours in there. They have the plan already passed along to them. It's like a fire drill, a fire escape plan. Those plants are constantly adapting. Ornamentals and exotics, while beautiful, are frozen. That's just, they have one dance move. And that's it. And they're never going to get out of that one dance move. Native plants will create habitat. I say think Yellowstone because most people know the story of Yellowstone, that they brought the wolves back, and Yellowstone kind of sprang to life again. The coolest part of that story that absolutely blew my mind, because I'm like, well, that all makes sense. You know, the wolves came back, they controlled the elk and the deer, plants came back, yeah, that makes sense. No, fish came back. They brought wolves back, and then eventually fish came back. Because the deer stopped eroding the streams by eating all the vegetation, the streams started to regain their normal path again, the beavers returned, the beavers dammed up the streams then being dammed up, all of a sudden fish appeared. Boom. Like that is how interconnected everything is. Fewer inputs. Native plants love crappy New England soil. The biggest mistake most people make in planting their native gardens is over-amending their soil. They're treating it like it's an ornamental, like it's a peony or a David Austin rose. No, they're from here. They hate it here. They hate the weather, they hate the soil, but they're not going anywhere, just like me. I'm from here, I hate the traffic, I hate the weather, but I'm not going anywhere. This is where I'm from. Healthy plants equal increased carbon cycling, just like we were talking about. When your plant is photosynthesizing and is extremely healthy, it is drawing down more carbon from the atmosphere. It is creating more life in the soil. So we have healthy soil is sequestering carbon, healthy plants are sequestering carbon. Now we're getting somewhere. Biodiversity is the key. Now this image right here might totally freak some of you out, and that's okay. Because biodiversity doesn't necessarily need to look like this. What I do in my design business is I create, if somebody wants a wild looking meadow, then you get one. If you would like a composed meadow, then I can still have all that biodiversity, but it doesn't have to look as chaotic as this might look to some of you. Some of you might be like, what are you talking about? That's beautiful. Other people might be like, I can't. But here's the cool thing about biodiversity. With this right here, you have lots and lots of plants. So they're covering the soil. They're protecting the soil. This is what's happening above ground. In this garden right here, something is eating a plant. But in this garden right here, the something that eats that something also lives here. So you kind of have built-in pest control. You have food for all types of life in here. Birds, butterflies, everything that you need is all right here. It is all available. Down below the soil, all of these plants have different root depths. So as we were talking about, the deeper the roots go and they push the sugars out into the soil, and that feeds the life in the soil. Well, if you're feeding the life 3 feet down, if you have some grasses with 3-foot roots, now you're feeding the life 3 feet down. The water, when it makes its way to the soil, follows those root channels. So now you're getting water 3 feet down, which is an amazing thing. So having biodiversity, having lots of different plants, benefits you in a number of different ways. As I was just talking about, we have root depths at all different levels. So it's supporting soil life at all different levels. It's delivering water and creating pore space at all different levels. So why does this matter? 98 million acres of native vegetation has been replaced by managed landscapes and non-native ornamental plants. There are 135 million acres in residential land. This is not something to feel bad about. Like I said, I'm not giving up my house, and I wouldn't expect you to give up yours. I like my little piece of the property. But all that land put together equals more than all of the national parks and the land used for corn production in 2014. So if you've ever been to Yellowstone or the Grand Canyon, and you're like, wow, nature's huge and it goes forever. No, all of our little pieces of the planet are actually way bigger than that. This is the antithesis behind Doug Tallamy's Homegrown National Park. And saying that if we all do a little something and stitch our little piece of the planet back into the planet, we can actually have a major impact. Studies have shown that the use of non-native plants is linked to the decline in the biodiversity of insects. You might be like, hooray, I hate bugs. However, the decrease in bugs has reduced the populations of birds. I've never heard anybody say, hooray, I hate cardinals. Never once. It takes 9,000 caterpillars to raise 5 chickadees. When you see them flitting back and forth, if you have chickadees on your property or songbirds on your property, that's a good thing. Guess where they're not finding the caterpillars? They're not finding the caterpillars on exotic and ornamentals. All those caterpillars are living on native plants. So if you have a sterile landscape, then you are not going to, that chickadee is not going to find all the caterpillars it needs to raise its young. But how cool is that? We actually have the power to feed the chickadees and the cardinals. This is the cool thing and one of the responsibilities about being human. Okay? Every other species on the planet lives between here and here, life and death. And in between, they're just trying to reproduce and keep the species going. We, in between, have the power to make all sorts of decisions. And one of those decisions can actually be to support all of those on the planet without the voice. So the plants you choose could make you a superhero. Hopefully, after this, you are going to go home, maybe wrap a towel around your neck like you were a little kid and start flying around like a cape. Because you are going to feel empowered to be your own superhero. Like protecting these 3 ladies right here. These 3 ladies are specialists. They're like 4-year-olds. They only eat a couple things, and that's it. And if it's not there, they're not going to eat it. So, the plants you choose could support these ladies. They're all either locally endangered or locally extinct. So, meaning they might be endangered here in Lockport and extinct in Bradford, Georgetown. But you do not need to take a picture of this slide. This slide is up here just to show you one thing. The plants you choose don't have to be crazy. They're not crazy, hard to find plants. Penstemon, beard tongue. Very simple plant to find. Monarda, bee balm, most of us have that. Most of us put in the red bee balm because we want to have the hummingbirds. All you need to do is add some of that to your garden. Purple giant hyssop, agastache, also very easy to find, very common. Just by adding some of these plants, if you want the full list, you can go to Dr. Gagir, UMass Dartmouth, and he has created a website with a full list of plants that support endangered pollinators. If nothing is eating your garden, you're doing it wrong. Doug Towney also has a 10-foot rule. If you stand back 10 feet and you can't see the bug damage, don't worry about it. If you're up close on it and you see something, those caterpillars, that's chickadee food. Okay, so that's what you want. You know, this coming up, it's usually in the beginning of July, every year. It has happened every year for probably at least 15 years. I put in a pollinator garden for somebody last year. One of those people are going to call me around now and say, Trevor, my plants are covered in caterpillars. 25 years in the business. I have yet to find a way not to be sarcastic when I say, where do butterflies come from? I can't say it without it. However, this is exactly what we want. Now, let me tell you a little thing about bugs and plants. Plants and people, exactly the same. We take vitamins, pre and probiotics, and when we have a healthy gut and we have a healthy immune system. Our immune system is on the inside. Plant's immune system is on the outside. When we have healthy soil, the plants have a healthy immune system. When plants have a healthy immune system and they are able to photosynthesize, they are able to produce complete proteins in their sap. When they are able to produce complete proteins, they become less susceptible to things like aphids, because aphids can't digest complete proteins. When you have a plant and a healthy soil microbiome and it's really photosynthesizing, it produces lipids in its leaves. You know, we have those real shiny plant leaves. That's the layer of fat in the leaves. When you have a healthy layer of fat in your leaves, your plant is less susceptible to things like powdery mildew. When you totally have it dialed in, and your plant is producing secondary metabolites, polyphenols, it becomes indigestible to things like Japanese beetles. If your plant is being decimated, your plant's not happy. Instead of running out and getting a spray, you need to ask yourself, what's wrong? Ask your plant, what's wrong? Is the soil wrong? Are you not getting enough airflow? Are you not getting enough light? Because plants, like people, when they get stressed out, they get sick. Think about yourself at like holiday time. You're not sleeping well, you're eating like crap, and then you end up getting a cold. Same thing happens. When the plant is under stress from drought or anything else like that, it actually sends out signals, voluntary or volatile organic compounds. It sends out gases into the air. The insects pick up on that from miles and miles away, and then they will come and start nibbling that plant. The cool part is, that plant, once it is being nibbled, will also send out the bat signal, and that will call in the exact predatory wasp that is needed, because plants, when their leaves get nibbled, they're actually able to know who's nibbling them. By the saliva of the insect, they're actually able to know who's nibbling them, and then they send out the proper bat signal to call in whatever predator is needed to take care of that plant. Now let me just finish off my point with the nibbling. At Weston Nurseries in Hopkinton, there is a perennial hibiscus. You know the big dinner plate hibiscus? Okay, there is a perennial hibiscus on the edge of the parking lot. It bakes all day long, crappy soil, salt, exhaust, everything. That plant is skeletonized. I've been watching it because I've been a customer at Weston Nurseries for a long time. That plant is skeletonized every single year. Less than 100 yards away in their display garden, perennial hibiscus, nibbled. It's not that the insects can't find the next plant. It's that that plant is in the display garden. It's got a healthy immune system. It's loving life. The one on the edge of the parking lot is like, kill me now, and the insects are like, happy to. An insect's job is to remove the sick and weak plants in the environment. Just like it's the cheetah's job on the Serengeti to remove the sick and weak, whatever it is, antelope. So that's why they are here. We've been taught, and because plants are normally an investment of ours, we've been taught to be like, oh, I gotta run right out and kill something. So it's not really that. The fact that your plant is sick is it's actually telling you something. So a place to start. This is actually not available right now, but I will make it available to all of you. So go ahead. On the Weston website, I created for them 7
very small little teeny
So I created 7 different pollinator-friendly and wildlife-friendly gardens. There is an endangered species garden. There is a pollinator powerhouse garden, a bird garden. There is a hell strip garden, the little place between the sidewalk and the street. There's a hell strip garden where all the dogs pee and all the salt is. Native plants live there too. So I have these gardens designed. The colors of the circles and the colors of the plants in the image are exactly what color that plant blooms. The numbers in the circles are the number. These are 100 square foot gardens. These are the number of plants that you're going to put in there. They are very packed gardens. More mulch, more problems. So I have my method of kind of garden maintenance is such. I see my garden probably the last weekend in April. And then I'm not going to see it again until November because I'm in everybody else's garden. The only time I really see my garden and walk around and just see what's going on is pretty much on Sunday with a cup of coffee. That's as long as I weed. I go out there with a cup of coffee. All the major offenders are actually standing way above, and they are very obvious in the garden. I go and grab all of those. The next week, somebody else might come up, but I'm just going to leave you until next week. I'm going to weed for as long as that coffee lasts. If I am so inspired, which is rare because I hate weeding. My sister loves it, I can't stand it. But if I am so inspired, I might stay out longer and kind of do a little more weeding and everything else. But in spring, I do my editing of my native plants. My asters and my bee balm get very happy. So I have to kind of take them back and be like, no, this is your dance space. This is their dance space. But I let everybody kind of move around. One of the great things about editing is I can change the way my garden looks every year. Sometimes I edit the asters so there's a big river of asters going through it at the end of the fall. Sometimes I do it like big spotlights. And I just kind of edit them back and put them back in kind of their space and let them be where it is. I like my garden to never show up the same place twice. Nature will also tell you. In my design classes, I tell everybody, gardeners, landscapers, same thing. You are picking out an outfit from Mother Nature. You are picking out an outfit and saying, this is going to hit you in all the right places and flatter you in all the right ways. Sometimes, Mother Nature absolutely loves it. Other times, she's like a 3-year-old and it doesn't actually work. One of the cool things is that sometimes I'll put a plant here and I'll be like, that looks so good on you. She'll be like, no. And it'll seed itself and show up in another part of the garden. And then eventually the plant that I originally planted is going to kind of fizzle out. And I'll be like, okay, my bad. It actually looks better over here. This is where you want it. That's great. Wherever it's thriving is fine by me. So how will this all save the world? We've talked about soil. We've talked about water. We've now talked ad nauseum about plants. I love plants. But how does this all connect to climate change? Fifth grade, just like I told you. 95% of the Earth's heating and cooling is controlled by the hydrologic system. With all of our impervious areas, we're not helping. With all of our compacted soil, we're not helping. We need to restore hydrology. 25% of solar radiation is transferred back into the atmosphere through evapotranspiration. As those plants release moisture into the air, they are reflecting back solar energy. We really only need to bring the heating of the planet down 1 degree. Everything is real easy. 1 gram of carbon, 1% soil organic matter. We only really need to bring the planet down 1 degree. It's not that hard, and 25% of solar radiation is reflected back through evapotranspiration. 1/3 of solar radiation is reflected back by clouds. So if we have more green space, if we have more evapotranspiration, if we have more moisture available in the soil, then that will evaporate and that will create those local fluffy clouds that we like. It takes, anecdotally, not scientifically proven, but anecdotally, it only takes 50 trees per acre to change a local ecosystem, to change the climate in your local ecosystem. Why is it only anecdotal and not scientific? Because nobody's funding it. It's really hard to get funding for like real climate change research. So it has been proven a number of times, going all the way back to Charles Darwin, but it's not necessarily official research. We all know that plants need rain, but rain actually needs plants. All of that moisture back into the air. There are 2 types, what I didn't talk about in this, but I'll touch on really briefly. With the hydrologic cycle, there's 2 types. We have the long hydrologic cycle that we learned about. That's where evaporation comes off the ocean, the clouds move, they cool, we get rain. What we don't talk about, and what we're actually struggling with and is disappearing, is the short water cycle. That's the dew on your grass in the morning. That's a sun shower. In the summer, that is local moisture. That is extremely nurturing for the soil and for the plants. That's that gentle rain, that gentle moisture. That's what we really need. The problem is we're getting so hot that all that dew and everything is just evaporating, and it's not actually hanging out and cool. So, with the final thoughts, one of my favorite quotes ever. And I actually have designed whole businesses around this. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the old model obsolete. Why is this so important? We're not going to get anywhere if we go out and plant shame people. I am not a zealot. We can't go around and plant shame people and say, you don't have the right plants. There's no such thing as the right and wrong plants. My biggest challenge is getting people out here in their gardens, getting people to interact with nature again. That is my biggest challenge. If you like to be out in your yard and you don't have one native plant, I'm okay with that. Even non-native plants do provide ecological value. They're sequestering carbon. They're providing food for generalist insects, and some of them have seeds for birds. So it is certainly not the end of the world. But and I'll give you an example of this. I used to live in Arlington. In Arlington, I had a neighbor to the right of me, Sierra Club member, Audubon member, lots of bird feeders, hummingbird feeders. And I had my neighbor to the left, young guys, just kind of hanging out. Was talking over the fence to my neighbor to the right. She's like, I have all of this, and all of them are in your yard. Why? So I went over, and I said, look, we do this, this, and this. Plant some of this, move this over here. You're going to have more of that. She went ahead and did that. Boom. She started having all the songbirds and hummingbirds. She had the feeders, I had the honeysuckle. The guys on the other side were just like, you know what? I love looking into your backyard. I was like, creepy. But and so they were just like, all right, well, what can we do? So what I'm saying is, if we start maybe removing or reducing our lawn, if we start showing people that natives aren't messy, if we just start creating habitat and making our properties a piece of the planet again, other people will catch on. Not by shaming them, not by telling anybody they're doing it wrong, just by showing them that it works. And that's what it's all about. The best real world model of that is this. We all get ourselves a cell phone. About 2 years later, we're like, this thing's a piece of crap. Because they just invent a model to make the old model obsolete. So it actually works in the human psyche, and that's all we have to do. But there is no right and wrong. I go to people's properties all the time, and I just, I'm sorry, I don't have many natives, or I don't care. I don't care. Do you like being out in your yard? You know, the other thing, the two pieces that people will say to me, they'll be like, well, what about ticks? Yes. One of my mentors actually died from a tick disease. Ticks, they're serious. And the fear of ticks has actually scared a lot of people indoors. What I say to that is, when you cross the street, especially here in downtown, what do? You go both ways. When you're on your bike, what do? Put on a helmet. When you go out into the landscape, just take precaution. That's all you have to do. A tick is not much more dangerous than a car zooming around a corner here. Both of them can actually take you out. As long as you're careful, you're going to be fine. So it's just, I encourage you to encourage everybody just to get out and appreciate nature. Tell them about those moments. Experience the moment for yourself first. Be out in your garden by yourself and just experience a green sweat bee or a butterfly, and just know you're the only person who had that experience. And then encourage people to do the same. Right? So, as was in the introduction, peace, love, and pollinators. If you like the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, please do check out the podcast. It's on a number of different platforms. It's not just about pollinators. I've covered a number of things. Recently, I've been highlighting minority and female-owned businesses, small native nurseries, to make sure that people learn about them, learn about the struggles. We've talked about everything. We've talked about erosion control. There's a lot of different topics on there. Pick one that you like. It is not how to grow the best hydrangea. There are plenty of podcasts out there like that. It is pretty much in line with this, what we're doing. Tuesdays with Trev. We are kind of in the thick of it right now, but every Tuesday from 6 to 7 on Zoom, free Q&A. You go to ecolandscaping.org, go under their events, find Tuesdays with Trev, get the link. I'm always there, whether 4 people show up or 80 people show up. People bring their questions. Some people don't. They just like to hang out and listen. I have people who have been with me, this is my 6th season, so I've had people who've been with me for 6 years and we hang out like we're friends. I have new people who are like, I'm new to gardening, I just want to know what to do. We talk about vegetables, we talk about lawns, we talk about anything you want to talk about. I will just answer the questions to the best of my ability, and we just hang out and have a good time. You don't have to stay the whole time, it's not a class. You can go and ask your question, and then when you're happy, get out. It's absolutely fine. It doesn't bother me if people stay the whole time or not. Go ahead. And then ReEarth Solutions, as I was talking about. So what I have done for the past 25 years, I have blended and come up with my own custom soil amendments to help jumpstart our dirt and turn it back into soil. So what ReEarth does is, I will send you a form. You will send your soil sample to the lab that I use. They will send me the results, and then I will send you, in plain English, what it is that you need to do to fix your soil and what's wrong with it. I can then, if you would like, custom blend exactly what your soil is deficient in and give you that custom blend put down on your soil. The idea was, I've been doing this for myself forever, and the reason I like to give these talks and the reason I like to do all of this is I like to empower people to succeed. That's why I'm going to give you the answers. And then if you want to buy the custom blend, great, but you'll have the answers. It's good to know. Like I said, out of all those 50 soil tests, the majority had too much phosphorus. What do most of us do in the spring? Put down fertilizer, adding more phosphorus. Phosphorus retards all the growth in the soil, like the microbes in the soil, the fungi in the soil. It makes it very hard for it to grow. It locks up other nutrients in the soil, which is why your plant is struggling, but then you go ahead and you're going to throw more fertilizer at your plant. Fertilizer is like steroids. It is just growing a big plant. Anybody on steroids might look amazing, but they're not healthy. When you amend your soil, your plant grows at the rate that it is supposed to grow, and it has a healthy immune system. And that's what we want. When we're trying to get healthy, it's not, we want to be all at once, but when we slowly get there, that's how we get longevity, that's how we get health span. So, I thank you all very much. Go ahead. So here is all of my contact information. ReEarth Solutions, as I mentioned, is the custom soil amendment company. CFS, Regenerative Design Studios, is my design build business that I share with my friend Marie Chiepo. If you want to, if you're an Instagram person, you want to see what I've been doing for the past 20 years, there it is. And if you have any questions that don't get answered tonight, or if at any point in time you're just like, hey, Trev, I'm putting in my first pollinator garden, my first rain garden, I just have some questions about it. Go ahead and email me. People email me all the time. I want you to be successful in your landscape and make your landscape a part of the planet again. Thank you.